Hello and welcome to Origin of Concepts. In this episode we will explore the origin of the famous and mystical Pillars of Heracles, or Pillars of Hercules in the Roman version. We will start with the Greek version of Heracles because that's the origin of that myth. All right. The Pillars of Heracles in Greek mythology, representing the edge of the known world, and is tied to Heracles' 10th labor of bringing back Gerion's Kell. These mythical pillars were seen as the limit for mortals, a gateway to the unknown Atlantic. With other words, the pillar is the gateway between mortality and spirit, as always. Okay. Today you will learn that the Pillars of Heracles and the narrow strait of Gibraltar is both visualized by the striped shadow in the Milky Way center. So let's jump to the Milky Way. Let's start with some key features from the ancient texts and see if we can find them here. Hercules had to cross the Atlas mountain on his way to the garden of the Hesperides. Instead of climbing the mountain, he smashed his way through it, connecting the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea with a narrow strait. Let me get my pen. And we pick a color here. Okay, let's start with the Atlas Mountain, which is formed by the outlines of the Milky Way center. So what you got here is the Atlas Mountain. The striped shadow here represent the rocks from Hercules smashing through the mountain. You can see all the rocks he's smashing here. And the same shadows, ta-da, is the pillars. Normally there's only 2 pillars, but I'll get back to that later. And the narrow street between the pillars is also the striped shadow, also known to the ancient as the Strait of Gibraltar, the strait in the Milky Way mountain. And if I delete them, this is the narrow strait. So there you got it. But let's move on. Because on a Heracles' way, he met a stone pillar who bore the warning Ne plus ultra, which means nothing further ahead. The pillar with the writing is visualized by the striped shadow emerging from the disk. And here we got the pillar. And of course the black shadows or stripes is the text written on the pillar. And the reason why you can go further is because this pillar is the mortal realm or the mortal behavior or mind. And when you reach the spirit or the disk, you can go further. Because, philosophical speaking, it is the physical impossible to go further, because from this border and beyond, you're only able to use your imagination or wisdom or spirit. So you can't go further than this. It's pure wisdom. All right. Then I'll move it all back. And then we got the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. And the Atlantic Ocean, the Sea of Atlas, is the blue-greenish area above the disk here. So here you got the real Atlantic Ocean. And then we got the Mediterranean Sea. And this is a little funny because when people like Plato and others are talking about this, they actually mean the real Mediterranean Sea. But the Mediterranean Sea also got its name from somewhere. And if we look at this drawing, we could say that the Mediterranean Sea is this area here, and here you got the narrow straits. So that's the meaning. You go from our world into the spirit world. And if you ask me, I think that the Mediterranean Sea is actually named after the Milky Way center. No matter what, the Mediterranean Sea means the water in the middle of the land. And here we got the water in the middle of the land. But I will leave that part up to you. It's not that important. The Atlantic Sea is way more important because no one knows where the Atlantic Sea comes from except from the Sea of Atlas holding up the heavens. And by the way, it's the same heavens. Atlas is, I'll make another video about Atlas, but basically he's standing like here, holding up the heavens. But that will be for another video. Okay. And then there is some very important basic understanding we have to go through to understand, because normally when you speak about the pillars of Heracles, there's only 2 pillars. But it was not that in the original text. Let me try to read here from my notes. Initially, there wasn't a specific number of pillars. The Greek poet Pindar simply referred to them as the Pillars of Heracles. That's it, the Pillars of Heracles. So that could be many pillars, which it is. It was not just 2, but many pillars. And then if we read on, he wrote that in his Olympian 3 texts. Later, the pillars was reduced to just 2 in the work Pseudo Apollodorus Bibliothecia, yeah, something like library. And this is of an unknown author. This idea possibly came alive because the 2 remaining halves of the mountain were interpreted as pillars. You know, Hercules is like crossing his way through the mountain and split them into 2. So that's very much the reason for that little, what should we call it, interpretation of failure. And this has become the 2 pillars, as we know, as the bronze and silver pillar. And those pillars are visualized by the 2 shadows on each side of the disc. So I'll clean the board here, and basically this is the 2 shadows who make up the 2 pillars. You see them on every entrance in every church and cathedral or temple or whatever. There's always 2 pillars, at least 2 pillars. And this is of course the bronze pillar here, because of the red light from the disc, and this is the silver, because it's the gray part of of the Milky Way center. Okay, and that's what I always refers to at the father and mother shadows in the Milky Way center. This is the father and this is the mother. You can watch more about this in my introduction video to the Milky Way. All right, and then in the later Roman versions of the myth, Clement of Alexandria, Herodotus, and Homer's Odyssey tell of Hercules creating the pillars to divide the earth from the heavens and freeing Atlas from his heavy burden, holding the heavens. And this is a kind of a mix because we also got this third pillar here. And that could very well be that one of the pillars in that myth. There's always the three pillars, but two main pillars, and then we got the, what should we name it, the human pillar. Or the mortal pillar. Okay. The pillars were first associated with the Strait of Gibraltar in Plato's Timaeus and Critias, which has no connection to the physical Strait of Gibraltar in southern Spain at all, as it is suggested by modern interpretations. So the narrow Strait of Gibraltar that Plato talks about has nothing to do with what people believe is the Strait of Gibraltar in southern Spain, where the Mediterranean Sea run out in the Atlantic. It has no connection. It's a misinterpretation of the ancient wisdom. So let us, and to solve this little failure or oopsie-doopsie, let's try to go into the etymology of the word Gibraltar. I will clean the board here, because when we break down the word and the history about it, we will see the difference of the Plato's Gibraltar and the Gibraltar in Spain, the physical Gibraltar. Gibraltar is the Arabic term for Tarek's mountain. Tarek's mountain. So let's start visualizing Tarek's mountain here. And if we trace the word Tarek, it reveals a meaning as to strike, like Heracles striking the rocks. Here, it's always striking or, throwing some thunderbolts or something like that. And if we go further back and look up what the meaning is to strike in the Arabic term at that point, the term also serves as an allegory for morning light, or even better, a mysterious light visiting at night. Aha! Because there's only light except from the stars at night on the moon, and this is of course the disk in the Milky Way center, the divine light which shines almost every night if the center of the Milky Way is visible at your place. And this light is, of course, running through the striped shadow. So, the Tarik or Gibraltar mountain is the Milky Way center. And if we move out of the etymology and look at the history of the name Gibraltar, Gibraltar was given its name in 711 AD. This is 1,000 years after Plato. And after a guy named Tariq ibn Ziyad supposedly landed his troops at the foot of the rock. Okay, so he landed his troops on the foot of the rock. This phrase is going again like a ghost in many, many, many myths. So let's try to draw his soldiers here on the foot of the mountain. Yeah. And however, I believe this is quite unlikely that the Tariq and his soldier is a real story. Because Tariq might simply be an Arab myth obtained from Greek mythology. Because Islam started in the year 600, around year 600, and this is 100 years newer. So of course they got it from the Greek, which got it from Egypt. Okay, let's see what I got here. The troops at the foot of the mountain is a well-used metaphor representing the striped shadow, the bystanders, crowds or hordes of people or animals. And maybe you already know a story of some people waiting at the foot of Mount Sinai, which, by the way, is copycat from the Greeks, which copied it from ancient Egypt. Sorry for my English, but I think you understand. It all goes again, just in, what do we say, old wine in new bottles. In other words, the Strait of Gibraltar is an allegory of the Milky Way and not the literal source for the Pillars of Heracles in southern Spain. So it's vice versa. There has never been a Strait of Gibraltar in the world before the myths, so to speak. The Pillars of Heracles is a myth inspired by the Egyptian obelisk and the story of Shu, Geb, and Nut. And in my view, the symbolism of pillars in every single temple and cathedral or any other holy building worldwide originates from the striped shadow in the center of the Milky Way. Every single one of them, in every single religion or belief system or occultism or mysticism, you name it. And even the Egyptian temples, they are here. The entrance to the grave. Okay, I will reveal more of this in another video. So basically, that's it. Now you know where to find the Pillars of Heracles or Hercules. And ne plus ultra, nothing further ahead. If you like my videos, give a thumbs up. If not, tell me I'm an old monument or a broken column. Until next video, take care. Bye.